Hi BookTube, how are you doing? I hope you're doing well. My name is Juan, I am just one reader, and this is my August wrap-up. So in the month of August, I read a total of 9 books, which is a very exciting number for me. And overall, I would say that August was a very successful reading month for me. I read some really amazing things. I read a couple of things that were maybe not as spectacular as the rest, but everything that I read was pretty much at least above average. And that's really great when you can have a month that is consistently good. And on top of that, the cherry on top of that is that I read 2 books that made it onto my favorites of the year. These are 2 novels that, they are now some of my favorites. So, it usually takes me a lot of time to do a wrap-up because I start rambling and talking way too much over each book individually, so I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna tell you my star rating and what I thought about the book, like general impressions, and be done. Because I have 9 books, so that could be a potentially very long video. So in case you're interested in hearing more of my thoughts and what I explored with each of these books, you can go and check out my previous videos in which I have mentioned them with more depth. So let's get started. Firstly, I read a non-fiction book, Misterios de la Sala Oscura, Ensayo sobre el cine y su tiempo. This was written by Fernanda Solórzano. She is my favorite Mexican film critic. She's wonderful. And in this book, she explores the context in which certain really popular movies were made and why they were so popular and why they have transcended the normal regular movie status and why they have become a big part of our culture. So some examples of these movies are Jaws, The Godfather, The Exorcist, and so on. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. It was super informative, and I loved reading a nonfiction book on film for a change. So I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. The next book that I read was The Two Towers, which is, of course, in case you don't know, the second part or the second volume of The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. And I enjoyed this. I did not enjoy it as much as The Fellowship of the Ring because I thought that book, the first one, had a certain charm to it, a certain naivete in the characters maybe, and the way that, you know, it was more whimsical and lighter, whereas this book, the second one, is, I guess, darker, in the story is darker and bloodier and more adult and more real, but also the themes are different. This one is much more political, and it deals with dynamics of power and war, and you know, with this big battle coming up, those are the themes that are explored in this one, and I enjoyed it. It was not my favorite one so far in this series, but I enjoyed it, and I gave it a solid 3 stars. The next book that I read is one of those books that I am really excited to have read this year. It's one of my new favorite books. It's one of my favorites of the year, at least, and it's my favorite classic that I have read so far. And it is, of course, The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I always feel like I want to say Oscar Wow, like the novel by Junot Díaz, but that's a completely different novel, also really good. But no, this is Oscar Wilde, and this book was just incredible. I just remember picking it up with some hesitation because I'm never a big fan of classics in general. Not because I don't like them, but just because I'm intimidated by them, which is a thing that I'm sure must happen to a lot of people out there. So yeah, I picked up this, and you know, knowing that it was a classic, I was kind of reluctant and hesitating. I picked it up, and from the opening line of the first chapter, or the prologue even, I was just floored. This was perfect. The writing was impeccable, absolutely perfect. The most gorgeous, gorgeous writing style that I have ever read in many years, I think. Just spectacular, elegant. The story was incredibly fascinating. The characters, super, super interesting, and voyeuristically fascinating as well. The pacing was incredible. I was riveted from start to finish, and it's a book that gave me a lot of food for thought. Yeah, it was great. 5 stars, easily. The next one that I read was La Respiración Cavernaria. This is an Argentinian novella by Samantha Schweblin. It's about this old lady who is in a very dark place in her life. She is kind of spiraling down dementia, and she's spiraling down into dementia, into confusion, into decay. And so it's a very bleak, very depressing story. It's kind of bizarre and confusing in the way that it's told. I think the author, Samantha Schweblin, really accomplished a sense of confusion more than anything else in the reader. And I really love how she mirrored the character's state of mind in the writing itself. I gave this 3 stars. It's maybe nothing really memorable or spectacular, but it is well done. The next book that I read was The Silence of the Lambs by Thomas Harris. This is part of the Hannibal Lecter series, and it was my first foray into the series. I have to say I was mildly disappointed because this book, even though it contains some really amazing dialogue and some really great conversations between Hannibal Lecter and Clarice Starling, the protagonist, the rest of the book just felt very, very uninteresting and kind of dull. The rest of the story is this kind of police procedural, crime procedural, you know, we have to catch the serial killer. Oh, who could it be? And where could he be? And why is he doing this? And I didn't really like that story that much. So because the book was inconsistent and there was nothing really amazing about the writing style or anything, I gave it 3 stars. Then the next book that I read is another of the books that I told you that is now part of my favorites, The Catcher in the Rye. Oh, this is so wonderful. I really want to pick it up again and read it again and find more layers of in the writing. Oh man, this book is so well written. It is so simplistic and so deceiving. It's deceivingly simple, because if you look at the surface of it, at the basic storyline of it, you know, it's not a big deal, not a lot happens, but in reality there's layer upon layer of meaning and of theme and things to explore in here from a literary standpoint, but also from a psychoanalytical standpoint, which is what I attempted to do in my review for this. But yeah, I love this. I love the character. It's one of the best character studies that I remember ever reading. And yeah, it really captured me. It really captivated me. And as I said, I cannot wait to read it again and see and just realize how much meaning there is in this. So yeah, easily 5 stars. The next book that I read was Golden Hill by Francis Bufford. This is a historical fiction novel set in old New York back in the 17th century, I believe. And I just didn't really care for this because the writing style was trying to imitate that old Baroque, really beautiful, really rich writing, and I just didn't really like it. I didn't really fall for it. It kind of prevented me from really connecting with the characters or with the story. I just found it a little bit cluttered and confusing and pretentious. I just had this feeling that the author was kind of being a little bit patronizing and condescending, so I didn't really like that. I gave it 2 stars. But then I read The Heart of a Dog by Mikhail Bulgakov, a Russian novel, a very tiny little novel, a wonderful thing. This is about this dog that receives a transplant from a dead man. So basically, there's this scientist guy, this really eccentric scientist, who transplants the testicles and pituitary gland of a dead man into this dog. And so this weird experiment results in this kind of humanized dog, this humanized creature who is not really animal, not really human, not really anything really. And it's a really clever exploration of humanity and morals and ethics It's also a very political novel. It's supposed to be also a metaphor for the Russian Revolution, and I don't know about that because I don't know about the Russian Revolution, so I couldn't really address that part of that political layer of the novel. But I will say that it's a book that speaks to the essence of humanity and how humanity makes groups and societies and starts behaving in different ways when it's part of a bigger group and a bigger community. So in that way, this book really cleverly explores group relationships and class. So really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. And the last book that I completed in the month of August was the lovely and whimsical novel, The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making. This is, of course, by Catherine M. Valente. And I really enjoyed this. My only problems were that the plot was not as strong as its other qualities. This book has a lot of really great qualities, mainly the writing, which is so beautiful and lyrical. The whimsy that overflows this book is just incredible. The colorfulness of it, the imagination, the quirkiness of it, and the characters and the settings, and it's like dipping into a world where everything and anything can happen. And I really like that, although I did find the plot to be a little bit slow and not really that relevant, really. Also, this is a very strange little book in that I don't really know who is the target audience for this book. I don't know who Catherine M. Valente wrote this book for, or who she had in mind, because if we think middle grade, it is a middle grade book in its premise and its story and all of that, but a middle grade, like an actual middle grader, a middle grade reader would have a lot of difficulty understanding this book because the language is really elaborate. However, a young adult, I don't think a young adult would like this just because it feels very childish. It is very childish. It's innocent. It's wholesome. And I don't think teenagers really want that because they are teenagers. They just want something else. So I think this actually might be better suited for adults. Adults maybe such as myself, who can have that kind of desire to go back to when we were children and we could experience these stories, but now with a much more grandiose kind of writing style, so that we can have the best of both worlds, the best of being able to read more adult language and being an adult reader and looking for certain themes, but also having the kind of power and joy to discover and to enjoy a book such as this one. So yeah, that's all I read and I gave this 4 stars, by the way. Really wonderful. So that's everything that I read in the month of August. I really had a great time in August, and I'm looking forward to September. I'm gonna read some great books thanks to you guys who have recommended me some really great things to read. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Please leave your comments down below and we can have a conversation. Thanks for watching. I am Just One Reader. I'm nothing special, in fact, I'm a bit of a bore. When I tell a joke, you've probably heard it before. But I have a talent, this wonderful thing, 'cause everyone listens when I start to sing. I'm so grateful and proud. All I want is to sing it out loud. So I say thank you for the music, the songs I'm singing. Thanks for all the joy they're bringing. Who can live without it? I ask in all honesty. What would life be without a song or a dance? What are we? So I say thank you for the music, for giving it to me. And yeah, I'm driving.